All right, well, while we're kind of waiting to see if Paul is here. Paul, by the way, is an ESL colleague of mine. We worked together for a long time in the ESL department. So I'm anxious to see him because he doesn't teach in the winter. So I'm excited to have him here. Well, welcome, Chris. Thanks for coming. Paul, I hope you can hear us. Thanks for being here. This is a teaching and learning and technology roundtable. This is our fourth one, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, number four.
This is our number four. And the TLTRs are a collaboration between IFEX, the Institute for Faculty Excellence, and IDS. And I'm Naomi Marduk-Uman. I'm the Director of Faculty Development, and I work within the Curriculum and Instruction team. And I'll let my colleagues, David and Jessica, introduce themselves before we get started. They are my partners in this TLTR thing. So David, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm David Bentz. I'm an instructional designer here at MCC. I've been here a little over a year. I've been working with faculty for quite some time. So well over 20 years, developing online courses, improving your teaching, or working on coaching faculty on how they can improve their teaching and some of the outcomes and those kinds of things. And we were going to talk about three different topics. So the three of us, Naomi, Jessica, and myself, we were going to share topics today that we were sort of passionate about. Naomi, do you want me to just jump right in, share my screen and get going?
You can. Maybe Jessica will just say a few words about who she is, and then we can get started. Yeah.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Delmonico. I am an instructional designer on the Instructional Design Services team, and I just started here in September.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, David. We can get started. While you're pulling up your screen, I'll just say that David and Jessica and I were sort of thinking, what should we do for this one? And we just have these topics that we're excited about and enjoy talking to faculty about, and I think can be really useful for faculty. So we thought we'd do a little, I don't know, they're all related, but it's a little bit of a mixed bag of things we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So did I get my screen shared?
We can see it. It's in the notes format or the presenter view.
Yeah, right. So yeah, that's kind of weird that you can see like everything, but
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how you change that. Okay. Well, it is what it is, everybody. So and I don't have any notes, so you don't have to worry about reading any of those. So this is one of the areas that I'm sort of passionate about. About 10 years ago, I worked on my doctorate in distance learning, so study of distance education. And the research that I did really centered around the importance of teaching presence, or, you as an instructor, kind of projecting yourself into your classrooms and why that's important. And I thought what I would do is let you know a little bit of the results of the research that I did. I and a couple of other colleagues went ahead and asked students, what is it that you want from your instructors? And I think it's universal. I think, it doesn't matter if it's online or face-to-face. I think it really, counts in both formats or all formats. But the results were, I thought, pretty intriguing. So that's what I thought I would do today, is kind of just share some of that. Just to let you know what it looks like. What is it that students expect from us? So obviously, teaching presence is important because it sort of helps students with their self-efficacy. Like, a lot of times students want to get to know their instructor kind of first off, even more so than their student colleagues, so that they feel like they belong in the space. And that, again, helps their self-efficacy, helps them feel like that, they deserve to be there. They're in the right place. And they're reading your body language all the time. And if you're teaching face-to-face in an online course, they're trying to figure out who you are. We all kind of do that first day. I call it a kind of a first day wrap, where we talk to the students, sort of set the expectations for them. But once they get a sense of who we are, they feel more comfortable in the space. And research has, told us that that improves their outcomes. So the more comfortable, the more that they feel like they belong there. They maybe have someone that they can feel like they make a connection with, those outcomes go up. Also, you as an instructor gain a greater sense of who your students are, right? We all want to know why students are, or not necessarily why, but we want to know that we've got them, captured for the time that we're with them, and that we want to help them become successful in what it is that they're trying to endeavor, right? Like they want to go out and make a career out of something, or maybe they're coming back to school to change careers. Those are things that I think also, work from our side of the coin, right? That we want to make sure that we get to know our students and we have that connection as well. I think it makes it much more meaningful for us when we teach students. Okay. So anyhow, here's what the research said. So we went ahead and we asked both graduate, undergraduate students what they wanted face-to-face and online. I'm getting feedback. Can somebody mute everybody?
Okay, I got it.
There we go. Yeah, somebody's got their speaker on and we're getting feedback. Anyhow, this is quite a number of people that we surveyed. So it was almost 1,100 students. Again, both graduate and undergraduate. The number one thing that students said that they wanted was they wanted an instructor that was clear with their communications. They wanted an instructor that was for communications. Okay, I'm just gonna wait. The other thing is they said that they liked an instructor that had, kind of a friendly disposition, somebody that was approachable, someone that they felt comfortable with and had the ability to make themselves known to the students. The other thing that they liked, so we're on number 3 now, was clarity. And clarity was more about the instruction. So they wanted their instructors to be, provide to them clear instruction and guidance. And they wanted well-organized materials. And then number 5, they wanted feedback. So they liked having prompt feedback, things like less than 24 hours, on discussion boards or emails, things like that. Getting their graded assignments back to them in, kind of timely manner. And then facilitation. So like if they had questions or struggles with things that might be outside of the classroom, like where's the reading center? How do I get to this building? Who are the people that I need to talk to in, financial aid, those kinds of places. Someone that was, had pretty good mastery of the institution and could facilitate to them the institution and some of the learning materials. They really liked it when instructors participated in the discussions, whether they were face-to-face or online. They felt that was critical. Again, sort of closing the loop in that kind of social sphere that they wanted to feel comfortable in or belonging into. And then for online courses, they wanted things to be easily navigatable. So a course that was well-designed, and I think that's universal as well. Even if you're teaching face-to-face, they like to have the teaching materials well organized in Canvas and things like that. Also, they wanted their instructors to send them reminders so that they didn't miss things. I know that sometimes that's, we kind of think that, you got to be an adult and you got to set up your own calendar or your agenda for yourself. But the students really did appreciate having reminders just kind of pop up or let them know when things were happening so that they could make sure they didn't miss things. And then understandable. And this one is a little different than what you might think. So understandable was they wanted to make sure that you spoke clearly and wrote clear instructions for them. So some of that kind of goes back to the clarity, but we had a lot of people respond in the survey that they had trouble listening to people that maybe had talked with an accent. So some abilities for redundancy. if you could write something out as well as speak it, that would be helpful, especially things that were more complicated. And what I thought was kind of unique here is these are all of the students together, and then we broke it out by graduate and undergraduate. And I think what makes it kind of pertinent to community colleges, we have a lot of students that are new students, coming out of high school, but we also have a lot of returning students. So a lot of what you'll probably see in the graduate results, and they're just slight differences. The graduate results, I think, would be a lot of our adult learners who are coming back, maybe possibly changing careers or, continuing their educational journey. So the undergraduates look very similar. I can kind of go back and forth here. So you can see communication is the number one thing, disposition, clarity, materials, facilitation, understandable feedback, easy navigation, and sending reminders. But if we go back, the discussion participation, sort of comes into play. And you can see when we go to the graduate students, let me jump ahead here, a couple of slides. So here are the graduate students. You can see that discussion participation. So, you as kind of the center of knowledge, or the person that, is professing to them, they want you to be a part of it. They want to be able to ask you questions and be more probative than kind of dictatorial. And these will be probably, like I said, a little bit older learners. So, I think that touching on some of this and seeing some of this research, I think it should give you some ideas that really what we're asking you, or, trying to promote you to do, is to project yourself into the course, right? Like, whether or not it's a face-to-face course, ask students by name, call on students by name. There's all kinds of different things that you can do. Let me touch on that. If you're doing an online course, one of the things that I promote the most is, it's real simple. Just make a quick welcome video. Again, you're watching me now, and many of you probably have never met me, but you've made some assertions or some assumptions just by my presentation here today and my presentation style about who I am. And you may feel more comfortable or more willing to reach out to me just because of this short presentation that I'm doing. So think about our students. They think a lot along those same lines. The other thing is, think back when you yourselves were undergraduate students for the first time in a classroom. I know for myself, I was pretty trepidatious. Like, I was pretty fearful. I wanted to sit in the back of the classroom and just kind of observe and see what it was that I got myself into. So making that environment more welcoming, again, whether it's online or face-to-face, is sort of what we need to do at the very beginning. Once we do this, it gets students much more comfortable in the learning space. They'll begin to make friends with their colleagues as well. And that's another topic that I can talk on some other time, but it's called social presence. And so we want to move students, from the place where they're looking to you to provide them with all of the hooks and levers and resources of what they're supposed to be doing, to being, kind of self-actualized, learning together, learning in groups, taking some responsibility for their learning. But this list that I've got, obviously it's not a complete list. These are things that I just sort of jotted down off the top of my head, but let students know what your office hours are. Be redundant about that. At the end of each class, or, in your online course, make sure that it's very clear and kind of upfront, and represent it to them, multiple times. Hey, like, if you guys have questions about today's materials, here's when you can get a hold of me. Here's how to get a hold of me. Don't hesitate to give me a call. I can, provide clarity or, some further instructions. And you might find that there are things that you yourself, you might think that you're very clear on some of the things, and students, by getting a hold of you may show you that you may have missed the mark. So it gives you an opportunity to sort of get them on the right course. The other thing that students really want is they want to be held accountable. So I know that some of us, we sometimes feel like, we're tough graders or things like that. But the feedback in the research that I got from the qualitative, these are the handwritten kind of responses. They really wanted, there was a voice in there that said that students really expected to be held accountable, or that you placed high expectations on them and let them know what it was to be successful with the materials that you're teaching. And then explore ways to communicate with your students outside of class, right? These are people, these are folks that are going to be in our society. You know, you may see a kid in the hallway or a student in another course, and, you know, make sure that you reach out to them or see how it is that they're doing, or, you know, kind of query them. Again, the sense of building a sense of community and belonging is so important to our students, especially at the front end of every course, but I think also through their journey. So that's really all I have. Are there questions? I know we just have Paul here today, but anybody else have questions, comments? Okay, well, what's great about this topic is, and I don't know who's going next, Naomi, is Jessica going to go next?
It's Jessica, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, listen to Jessica, because I think a lot of what I just spoke about will dovetail really, really nicely with Jessica's topic. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Jessica. See if I can get this stop share. I don't know where it is. Give me a second, guys. Stop sharing. Where did it go?
I did it for you.
It's off. Very good. Thank you, Naomi. I couldn't find the button. I don't know where it
I was going to
was.
let you struggle a little bit, but I thought I'd just.
That's okay. I don't mind. I get to learn that way.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the 7 principles for good practice in undergraduate education. This was research that was published in 1987. The research was published by author W. Chickering and Zelda F. Gamson. And these principles were developed from 50 years of research on the ways that teachers teach, students learn, and just the overall college experience for students and staff. So these principles have been intended to be used as a guideline for faculty members, students, and administrators to follow for ways to improve teaching and learning. Okay, principle 1 is to encourage contact between students and faculty. So frequent student-faculty contact inside the classroom and outside the classroom is a really important factor for student motivation and student involvement, as well as building rapport with students is vital to their success. So listed here, I just have some examples of how instructors can implement this principle into their own classroom. So the first one is provide personal feedback, list your office hours and hold virtual and or in-person meetings, make opportunities for review sessions and study groups, provide opportunities for discussions using discussion-based activities, comment on students' posts in the course to show that there's a presence in the course, and do check-ins to see how students are progressing. Principle 2 is develop reciprocity and cooperation among students. So learning is enhanced when it's more of a team effort. Learning is collaborative and social. It's not competitive and isolated. So working with others really increases involvement in learning. And students can do this by sharing their ideas, responding to others, reacting to other students, and it really sharpens their thinking and deepens their understanding. So again, listed, I have some ways instructors can implement this in their classrooms. The first one is provide opportunities for collaboration, like discussions, group projects, assignments, and peer evaluations. They can utilize tools in Canvas to provide students with a discussion and collaboration space that's just kind of their own space to learn together. Ask students to share information about their backgrounds and academic interests, again, building those connections, and asking students to discuss key concepts with other students whose backgrounds and viewpoints may be different from their own. Principle 3 is encourage active learning. Learning is not a spectator sport. So students, as we learned over the years, don't learn by sitting in the classroom, just listening to lectures and memorizing information. They have to talk about what they're learning about, relate it to past experiences and future experiences, and then apply it to their daily lives. So they really have to make what they're learning a part of them. So this is what Principle 3 talks about. Some examples include allowing students to relate material to their own interests through self-reflections, encourage self-evaluations and peer reviews, provide students with rubrics for evaluation and have multiple students evaluate the same project, give students concrete real-life situations to analyze. And I just want to point out that active learning, active learning can also occur outside of the classroom. So I know there's internships, independent studies, and cooperative job programs that students can join. Principle 4 is give prompt feedback. So recognizing and understanding gaps of knowledge will help guide students through their learning, and providing feedback that's appropriate and prompt on their performance will give them opportunities to receive those suggestions and make improvements. So some examples include utilizing discussions, polling, and or social media during or after a lecture to provide opportunities for students to ask questions or get feedback. Outline in the syllabus what students can expect for the instructor, and as well as response times. And schedule brief meetings with students to discuss their progress throughout the quarter. Principle 5 is emphasize time on task. Students really need support in learning effective time management. So allocating realistic amounts of time means effective learning for students and effective teaching for instructors. Some of those examples that I have include utilizing social network platforms or Canvas to make announcements, send brief reminders or bits of information to students at a time. Communicate to students on the amount of time they should be preparing for class. So for example, if there's a YouTube video that you want students to watch and it's 6 minutes long, just maybe put the time of the video next to the video link so they know, hey, this video is 6 minutes long and I have time to watch it now before work or something like that. Expect students to complete their assignments promptly, like in the syllabus. Underscore the importance of regular work, steady application, and self-pacing and scheduling. And break large projects into smaller, more manageable pieces. You can even require students to hit benchmarks. So for example, if they have, I don't know, a 5-page paper due at the end of the semester, maybe have a page or two due one week and then a few pages due the next week to break it up. Principle 6 is communicate high expectations. High expectations are important for everyone, and expecting students to perform well becomes really self-fulfilling when instructors and institutions hold high expectations for themselves and their students. So this can be done through making expectations clear at the beginning of the course, both in class and written orally. Providing students with rubrics and grading policies for assignments, detailing what must be accomplished and the grade value for each item. And also setting realistic expectations for course activities and assessments that communicate high but attainable expectations. And principle 7 is respect diverse talents and ways of learning. There are many roads to learning, and people bring different talents and styles of learning to Metropolitan. Students need the opportunity to show their talents and learn what works for them. and adjust to what works for them. So some examples include giving students real-world problems to solve that have multiple solutions, and you can also provide examples and questions to help guide them. Incorporate a variety of activities into the course, including group and individual projects or papers and discussions to reach a variety of learning preferences, and present the course materials in a variety of ways to reach the most modalities as possible. So in summary, just the primary goal of the authors and their research was to identify practices, policies, and institutional conditions that would result in powerful and enduring undergraduate education.
All right, thanks, Jessica. It's nice always to hear, those are always great and good reminders, I think, and this, I think teaching presence is a newer construct. David, don't you think, than those 7 principles? But it's really, there's a lot of
Yeah, what
hear
strikes me
echoing.
is kind of ironic is, you know, the research that I did about 10 years ago kind of matches up exactly with what, you know, the researchers found, you know, in 1987, that we basically call those kind of the 7 commandments of higher education, right? So students say that they want these things, and the things that, you know, are principles of good practice are the very things that students want. So, you know, it's all of this stuff is kind of universal, but I think it's always good to remind, you know, it's like a good sermon. It's always good to kind of remind people that, you know, this is what we do and this is how we should be doing it, and things that we should focus on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm going to take a piece of what Jessica talked about, active learning, and yeah, I'll just show you my slides here first. Oh, I lost my slides. Hang on. Okay, so now you can see my light bulb there, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So I was thinking about active learning, and we talk about it a lot, and there are departments where it's built into the curriculum easily. Like I work a lot with, yesterday I was talking to the diesel instructors, and of course they spend a lot of time in lab doing hands-on work, and we have lots of lab classes and other hands-on classes. But I also talk to a lot of faculty who say things like, well, I wish I could do active learning, but my subject matter just doesn't provide clear opportunities that I can see for group projects or discussions or debates, or games and the like. And they'll sometimes say, I know I'm not supposed to lecture anymore, but they've got so much to cover. And then they feel kind of bad about it, right? Like they're not doing something they're supposed to do. So first, I want to say that lecturing is not bad. And it's certainly not forbidden, and it's definitely not going away. Studies have found that it's still the primary instructional strategy in higher ed. That's not the newest research there in 2013, but that's when that article was written. And lecturing, along with reading, are really efficient ways of imparting large amounts of information. And I think everybody feels pressure from the amount of content that they feel they have to cover. But like every teaching technique, it can be done effectively or ineffectively. And there's lots of different ways to do it ineffectively and lots of different ways to do it effectively. But today I just want to talk a little bit about some ideas for making our lectures more effective. And by more effective, I mean that lectures that can help our students learn. So not just imparting content or us speaking and our students listening, but helping our students learn. One of the best quotes that I heard in my master's degree, and I understand it differently all the time, is you have to always think about, what does your teaching have to do with learning? Like, where you have to always keep making that connection. Like, what do your activities have to do with student learning? And I think lecturing is a really good time to take a look at that. So to think about how to make lectures more effective, we're going to draw on what we know about active learning. And active learning refers to students being involved in something beyond passive reading or passive listening. So it can range from, involving students in original research projects, like on one end, to what we're going to talk about today, which is using activities and strategies to engage students during a lecture class. It doesn't have to be a debate or a project or a game. It can be inserting some ways into a lecture that students can grapple with information, actively process it during your class time. And there's good research, like lots of research, that shows that active learning in all of its different forms, both at K-12 and in higher ed, it increases motivation, it increases retention and transfer of new information. So students are better able to apply information that they've learned in one context to another, which is what we all want, right? So when thinking about how we might make lectures a little more efficient, we need to think about what students are doing before class, before they get to us, and then of course what we're doing during the lecture. So I want to start with before the lecture. And what we can do, and you can also think about if you're teaching online, right? If you're recording lectures, what can you do to make that more effective? So even if we don't change anything about the way we lecture, so we just get up there and we talk for an hour. I'm not suggesting that, but say you do that. You talk straight through for an hour and 45 minutes. You can make that hour and 45 minutes more effective by helping students build familiarity with that topic before the lecture. So you have to prepare the students to hear the material. The traditional way of doing that is to tell students to read the chapter before they come to class. And if you've taught at all, that's not a super effective thing, right? To just tell students to read the chapter. You get some that do. And even for those that do, sometimes that cursory pre-reading isn't enough to get them enough familiarity with it to be able to really engage in that lecture. So before the lecture, before they come to class, if you assign the reading, give them questions they have to answer and submit ahead of time. Make it a homework assignment, make it worth points if it's important to you that they do it. We can create outlines for students to fill in. We can, or other types of graphic organizers for students to do while they read. You can also do this during lectures too, but they're good for active reading, which is what we want students to engage in. You can send students a short video ahead of class time, priming them for what you're going to talk about, gather interest, sort of activate their background information, what they already know coming in. And once they get to class, you can ask them warm-up questions, get people talking about the topic. You could have people do some writing for a few minutes ahead of the topic, make some predictions about what might be covered. And all of these just little activities that take maybe 2 or 3 minutes at the start of class, or maybe some time at home for the students. These are supported by evidence from the research that they prepare students to learn from that material better. So when they've done these things ahead of time, they can better process that information that you're going to be telling them. So that's kind of before the lecture, either as homework or during that first few minutes of class. And then once we get to the lecture itself, kind of the big suggestion I have, and it's not unique to me, is just that we need to relook at our text-heavy slides. A lot of folks are using, and I completely understand why, because there's so much content, but they're using PowerPoints provided by the publisher. And so there's just tons and tons of text. They're almost like study aids, right? Where you have lots of information on the PowerPoint slide. And essentially, people are either going to be able to read the slide and not listen to you, or they're going to listen to you and not be able to read the slide. And so, right, they're not getting 2 pieces of input. They're not going to read the slide and hear what you're saying. So you've got to decide what you want them to do. And even if you're reading the slide, you're going to run up against the limits of their attention span, because it's pretty boring to hear people read slides for an hour. So the first thing I'd have people do is revise your slides. I use notes when I lecture. And so it can be, you might want all that stuff on the slide. I would just say move a lot of it off onto your notes, and then have slides that just have a heading, maybe just have a main topic, maybe they have an image, something to help students follow the organization, but that requires them to listen to you and to put it in their own words in their notes. All these things will keep them a little more active while you're talking. Then the other piece that I want to just delve into a little bit more is this idea that we're working with attention spans that can go about 12 to 15 minutes of listening and then whatever you say after that, we can't say much about whether they're going to retain that. So if you think about a class, our classes are an hour and 50 minutes or 45 minutes long. You're going to have lots of spaces in there where you stop and do something else other than lecture, about every 12 to 15 minutes. So that's what I want to talk a bit more about. And that's it. In these little breaks for learning activities are where the active learning piece can come in. So these are not like world-changing or original to me ideas. They've been out there for a long time, but they're simple. They're things that you can do in your class, even if you say, oh, I can't do a group project. I can't do a case study. I just need to tell them about this stuff. These are quick little activities that you can do no matter the topic, if you're working with a primarily lecture-based class. So one of them is just to have students generate questions. So you lecture for 10 or 15 minutes. And you stop and you ask students to generate questions that they maybe would quiz their classmates with, try to stump their classmates. This has two purposes, right? It gets them thinking about the material, talking to each other, and then you can see how much they understood of what you had just been saying in the previous section of your lecture. You could have students do oral or written summaries, and I don't mean like a long paper, but simply to say, what do you think the main point was of that segment of my lecture? What do you think the most important thing is to remember? And they can agree or disagree with each other. They can debate that. And summarizing, you can have them take a few minutes to just summarize things in their notes. So take a minute away from the listening, go back to their notes, and maybe write 3 or 4 sentences of what they think the main idea was. And again, if you ask people to share that, if you can go around and look at what they've written, this is instant feedback for you on how effective the previous 10 or 15 minutes was. Many of you are familiar with the think, pair, share model. You could do write, pair, share, where you take a few minutes to think or to write something. You turn the pair portion as you turn to a neighbor, one other person, and discuss it. And the share would be for the whole class. And you can do that with writing too, instead of the thinking piece. I kind of like to do writing because when you tell people to think about something and not do anything, they usually get out their phones and look at them instead. So if I make them write something, they're thinking and writing. You could ask them how they might apply a new concept to another context, that application piece, that transfer piece. You might ask them a question that asks them to interpret what they've learned using the new information. A lot of folks are using now some like applications to do on-the-spot quizzing, like low-stakes, fun kind of polls and quizzes. I've used Kahoot. I've seen people use Poll Everywhere. I'm sure there's other ones that you all can share too. Those take a little prep, but then you can use them every quarter. And students tend to like that little bit of friendly competition and cooperation, hopefully not too much competition. And then if you're teaching online, you can use some of the capabilities that we have with our videos here, like in VidGrid, to insert questions into recorded videos. So if you're doing online lectures, I think, and maybe Chris or David or Jessica know better than me, but isn't it about 6 or 7 minutes that people will watch videos and then viewership just completely drops off?
Yep, that's exactly right. 7 minutes is about the max for a video before attention starts waning.
Right. So that's not too long to cram a bunch of stuff into, and you certainly can't do it for an hour and a half. So you could do some chunking of information, right, to make it more accessible for students. So there are lots of other things that you can do, but these are the ones that I tend to draw on almost spontaneously in class when I notice that eyes are glazing over, or I just feel like it's dragging a little bit. What can I do to get people back with me and engaged? And these don't take any planning on your part or any materials. It really all depends on your topic, how you want to do this. But the point here is that we have to pause during the lectures and ask students to do something with that material if we want them to learn it. And we know the lecturing can be effective, so I hope that I said that clearly at the beginning, that this is not at all to say that we shouldn't be using lecture as one teaching strategy in our classes, but we also have to include a really diverse range of activities, things like low stakes quizzes, group discussions, and then those application opportunities. So if you're watching this, if you're watching the video, or anybody here wants to talk through ideas for their classes, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about with faculty. So get in touch with me. I'd love to think through ideas for your classes. And then I'm interested in hearing from the folks that are here, what other things besides this sort of limited list I have here, what other things have you used successfully in your classes?
Naomi, I have an idea.
What?
So one of the things when we did another TLTR couple weeks back, we were out with the trades, and I remember hearing that some of those instructors were talking to us about, well, my students are all excited about coming because I teach hands-on stuff, right? Like they get to actually wrench on a diesel engine or build a circuit board or whatever it might be. And the students are really engaged because they, that's the part that's most appealing to them, but the writing and the reading part is not, right? They don't want to engage, like I don't feel like I'm a very good reader, or I don't write very well, but I know I can, wrench on things or build things with my hands. And that's the stuff I want you to, continue to feed me. Some of the strategies that I've given folks when I've worked in trades, help mentoring folks teaching in the trades is have the students, sort of break it up into groups if you would. Have the students talk about, before they leave, talk about or share with the rest of the class what the writing assignments are. So that way then the questions come forward, like how long is it going to be? How hard are you going to be grading in terms of my spelling and my punctuation? What is it that I have to read? But have the students in the classroom sort of give the instruction to the other students about what it is that they're supposed to do outside of class before they come back to start wrenching on things again. Sort of, again, make that environment more inclusive, make it a shared experience. You as an educator, it's nice because then you can kind of turn some of the classroom responsibilities over to, the students that are in the course to kind of mentor or, make certain that the students that may be trailing or may struggle a little bit with instruction understand what that is. And then by you standing there, at the front of the classroom, you can add clarity to it, right? So it becomes much more clear. I think sometimes students get into that dynamic where, the teacher doesn't like me because I don't do the writing or I don't do the reading, but I'm really good with this other stuff. And it doesn't have anything to do with that. You as an instructor are pushing the students to do all of the things that are required in the course. But if they're held accountable by their colleagues or their classmates or told what to do by those other individuals, sometimes it goes down a little bit better.
Yeah, I like that. And that attends, David, to that piece of the student to student interaction that we have to pay attention to as well. Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned being out at the ATC. I was out there yesterday, and one of the things that they talked about, which I think just is so cool. So in that session that you referenced, they were saying that, it's hard to tell students to do the reading ahead of time because what they want to do is they want to get out the lab and they want to try it. Right.
Yeah.
So they flip some of that and they do the hands-on first, like try it, see what this part looks like, see how it works, touch it, use it, and then go in and let's read about what it does. And just doing that little flip so they can picture that, can't think of the artifact, that's the wrong word for it, but the tool or the piece of equipment, have that experience manipulating that before they go and read about it, really flipped the switch for some of those students. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, another strategy that I've used when I was teaching, I had students kind of complain because I like to do group activities. I really like to get my students engaged, and getting kids to do group activities almost is like pulling teeth. They hate it, right? There's always the person somebody in the group feels like they're doing most of the work and everybody else is not, and that the grading is not fair. So I used to flip that, like kind of like what you're talking about. I would flip that around and say, I'm only taking points away. So everybody starts with an A. And then whatever it is that your group doesn't do, that's how your grade diminishes. And that sort of allays a lot of the fears of the people that are really kind of we know the students that we're talking about, the ones that are really intensive about getting every single point and not missing anything. They can bring a lot of negative energy into a group project, even though they may be excellent students. And so that sort of gives a little bit of leeway for maybe some students that are a little less likely or a little less eager in the beginning to do some sharing, to sort of open up that atmosphere in their group so that, you know, the tension is not quite as high.
Yeah. Others, Jessica, Paul, Chris, any ideas for, on any of this? We could talk about presence, we can talk about principles of undergraduate education, we can talk about active lecturing or just active learning in general. I don't know if any of you have ever monitored your teacher talk time. Have you? So you can have somebody record, have somebody come into the classroom and observe you and help you get a sense of the amount of time you spend talking versus the amount of time students spend talking. That's pretty eye-opening sort of on this, in this field.
Yeah, how do you do that? What's the process for that?
I mean, just ask a friend to come in
Oh,
and
I see what you're saying. I
watch.
thought
Yeah.
maybe there was like a formal process.
Oh, no,
where-
there's no form to fill out. No, you just say, hey,
Yeah.
can you come in and watch and see how much, because I've done it a couple times. And even though I think that I try to keep students active in doing things, I'm talking more of the class than I thought I was talking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, that's the fear of everybody that teaches, right? That we've got an hour or an hour and a half, whatever the time frame is, and that it's our responsibility to fill that time with, you know, important thoughts and important information. And sometimes, you know, and this is one of the advantages that I often talk to, you know, faculty about, you know, distance learning. You get an opportunity for reflection, right? Since it's not immediate, you don't have the kid constantly raising his hand, you know, going, oh, I know the answer. And then, you know, I mean, there's some time for us to process and have that opportunity to think a little deeper about something before we respond. And I think in classrooms, sometimes we get caught in that trap where it's, you know, he said, she said, back and forth kind of dialogue. And sometimes quiet time is necessary.
You're right. And I think we sometimes tend to move at the speed of the quickest student.
Yes.
And people just have different processing times. And that distance piece does allow people to take the time. You have some folks that, you know, want to prepare and script out what they're going to say, and others that are better at speaking more spontaneously. But yeah,
Or just thinking about something that you presented. You know, I mean, it takes a little bit of time, especially if it's you know, something mechanical where things, you know, have to go together. And I mean, even construction of thinking about constructing you know, your writing, it just takes some time sometimes just to, you know, be present in your thoughts and have, you know, the opportunity to put those things together before you're expected to respond.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's all I have. Any final words?
Yeah, that's all. I think this was really, really well put together. I like the idea that, you know, I think if you look at it in summary, what we're really trying to encourage folks to do is, you know, find new ways to be excited about your teaching and just humanize your classroom as much as you can.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks, Paul and Chris, for being here. Thanks, David and Jessica, for doing this with me.
Thank you.